Do you yearn for a time when video games were made with passion, creativity, and drive? Whether the game was a creative masterpiece or a train wreck, you at least knew you were playing someone's vision? Games like that are an incredibly rare thing in today's age, but here we have a perfect example of a game made with such intent. My name is St. Corvus, and this is my review of Romeo is a Dead Man. Having been released on the 11th of February 2026 on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series consoles, and PC, here we have the latest release from the bizarre minds of Grasshopper manufacturer and legendary director Suda51 himself. If you're in the know when it comes to gaming, then the name of that studio and creator are already going to tell you everything you need to know about this game and whether or not you're going to be interested. But for those of you that don't play as many obscure and weird Japanese action games, then these are the guys known for some cult classics such as Killer 7, No More Heroes, Shadows of the Damned, Lollipop Chainsaw, and Killer is Dead. If I had to say one thing that these developers specialize in, I'd say it's being at home in weirdness, and by the end of this review, you'll have a good idea on whether or not that's a world you want to join. I myself am only an occasional Suda51 enjoyer. I've played Killer is Dead, Sinemura, and a bit of No More Heroes, but when this game was first shown to me nearly a year ago, I could instantly recognize that it was a Suda51 game, and I swore that I would play it on release. The thing with these games is that while some are fantastic and others are maybe a little less than that, these games all have a certain look, feel, and energy to them that is distinctly Grasshopper and Suda. Let's go through part by part and see whether this is one of Grasshopper's swings or misses. You are Romeo Stargazer. Your girlfriend and love of your life Juliet disappeared on you, and after an incident of a monster ripping off half your face and killing you, your grandfather injected something into you to turn you into a half-dead dead man. You're now tasked with travelling through the destroyed space-time as an FBI space-time police agent to kill notorious space-time criminals. Yeah, that's what the story is actually about. I hope you're on board from that premise alone, because the game isn't going to give you much more than that, and it absolutely isn't going to make sense of it or become a more straightforward narrative in the slightest. If you've played any of these developers' other works, then you know exactly what's up. But if not, then know that Grasshopper do a good job of setting up a wild and wacky premise, but don't tend to develop it as the game goes on. This can work better in some games more than others, and here in Romeo is a Dead Man, I feel like it works a little better than most. With this being a more outlandish premise for a story, I like that the way it's presented matches that energy and isn't so straightforward. That's not to say that there isn't any further narrative past the intro, it's more like you get thrown into a rolling start and you either roll with the punches or just get totally lost. You've still got yourself a full cast of characters here that will each have their own moments of involvement in the story, such as Romeo's deceased grandfather who lives on the back of his jacket, the rest of Romeo's family, and other FBI space-time police agents, which all do a good job of being likeable, but I can't say ever do a good enough job at sharing or stealing the spotlight. You'll still get narrative moments and cutscenes at the beginning and endings of the levels you play through, which will be presented in two main ways. You have a mix of in-game cutscenes, which all look great and have the typical flair that this studio is known for, but you also have some comic book style cutscenes, which I feel a little polarized on. I do appreciate a game having multiple different ways of presenting its story and narrative, but I couldn't quite work out whether the comic style sections were meant to be alternate tellings of events, meant for moments that are more fantastical and wacky, or whether they're just story segments that the developers ran out of money to make actual cutscenes for. I personally don't think that the narrative ever reaches masterpiece level or anything close to that, but I do in particular appreciate the way that the narrative is delivered. There's an element to the cutscenes that make it feel like the game itself and what you're seeing may be an unreliable narrator, and that causes you to question everything you see. The second half of the game in particular I felt ramped up the narrative quite a bit, and got very creative both with visuals and gameplay styles of how the story came across. If I had anything I'd say needed improvement, I'd say stronger moments from the supporting casts would go a long way. We do get to see glimpses into who Romeo is as a person. He's a bit of an occult-believing conspiracy theorist who likes to help people and is a little on the naive side, but I would have liked to have seen some stronger reactions to the events happening in the game. He reacts startled and confused by what he sees and encounters, but I would have liked if the game lent a little more into him being full tinfoil hat wearing weirdo to give the character a little extra spice. So how does the game actually play? In true Grasshopper fashion, we've got ourselves a pretty traditional action hack and slash here, very similar to their other titles like No More Heroes, Lollipop Chainsaw, and Killer is Dead. Armed with one melee weapon of your choosing and one ranged weapon, you'll be travelling across different parts of Deadford across multiple different time periods and taking on the Rotters, a zombie-like enemy force under the command of the space-time criminals you have to hunt. The core gameplay does feel good. Actions are very responsive and feel satisfying to connect with enemies, whether it's melee or ranged. Combat isn't exactly what I would call slow, not as much so as something like a Souls game, but definitely doesn't have the speed and complexity of character action titles such as Devil May Cry, and instead sits in a place between the two styles. It feels a lot more like an older style of action game that we rarely see anymore, which actually feels quite refreshing. You've got light and heavy attacks with melee along with jumping and dodging, your gun which you can aim and shoot at any time, and the last addition to your core moveset is a move called Bloody Summer, which cashes in a built-up bar of enemy blood to do a big powerful attack that also gives you some health back. There's one major point of difference when it comes to the combat of Romeo is a Dead Man compared to other games in its genre, and that is how you actually upgrade Romeo's combat capabilities. In most action hack and slash titles that I've played, you spend currency to buy and unlock more moves to perform in combat that can give you a situational advantage, but you actually won't be doing that here at all. You have 4 melee weapons and 4 range weapons on offer, such as a slower greatsword or a regular katana for melee weapons, and a pistol or shotgun for ranged weapons. Once you've purchased and unlocked your weapon of choice, you equip it, and you already have the full moveset of the weapon immediately. There are instead 2 avenues of progression you'll go down. The first is using a rare currency to directly increase attributes of your weapons of choice, such as upgrading raw attack power or upgrading how much blood accumulates from enemies when you use the weapon. The second method of upgrading isn't for the weapons, but for Romeo himself. In your level up menus at checkpoints and in the hub level, there's actually a Pac-Man style minigame where you spend your main currency to travel across the grid in whatever pattern you want, and picking up upgrades along the way such as increase to max health, Bloody Summer bars, reload speed, and ranged attack damage, just to name a few. These will be your primary focus for getting through the levels and taking on your enemies, but there's in fact a whole nother aspect to combat that I haven't even touched on yet. From what I said just earlier, it might seem like there's no actual build variety to be found through your playthrough, but that wouldn't be the case at all. During your playthrough, if you explore every nook and cranny, you'll find badges to put on your jacket, which will act like perks. One that I found was that melee damage got a big increase, but at the cost of decreasing your range damage. Romeo can only equip a maximum of 3 of these pins at any point in time, and they actually make a huge difference to how battles play out. The second way build variety happens is a little more unique to me for a game in this genre, and that would be the oddly named Bastards. Bastards are more or less rotters that you've homegrown back in the hub level, and provide various effects when used. Some will shoot out a poison that does a damage over time to enemies, some will give you a damage barrier, while some can be used as outright attacks to enemies. These operate on a cooldown and can be upgraded by fusing with other bastards, or have new unique ones made entirely by fusing certain kinds of bastards together. Between the pins and the bastards, there are a wide variety of ways that you can take on the various encounters of the game. Even though this is primarily an action hack and slash title, there's 3 main types of levels you'll be taking on across your playthrough. The first and main one is obviously your main story levels, featuring a good mix of action, story, exploration, and puzzle solving. Occasionally as you travel through these levels, you'll find some TVs which will take you to subspace, a weird dimension where you will travel through a grid-like version of a world similar to the main one you're in, but you'll pretty much be going through and solving puzzles. The last type of level you will go into will be optional challenge levels called Palace Athene. These are pretty much just little labyrinths that work as combat challenges and come in a variety of difficulties that give you appropriate rewards and resources depending on what difficulty you do, and can be replayed at any time if you decide to change weapons and want to farm more currency. There's also a cooking minigame you can do, using items you collect to make meals that'll give you combat buffs, but I never do food and cooking minigames. You ain't getting me in the kitchen IRL, let alone when I'm gaming. Now lastly, as a segue into the design section of the review, I want to talk about what you fight throughout the game, the Rotters. I mentioned earlier that Rotters are basically zombies in this game, and that's very accurate. The standard ones do just look like zombified humans, but there's actually several different kinds of special and more powerful rotters that you'll come across. These special rotters do come in various kinds, and each have their own movement and attack styles. Some come up close and relentlessly attack you, some stand back and spit poison at you, but they all get taken down in the same main method. You see, all of these special rotters have a big glowing weak spot at a particular place on their body, and if you do enough damage to that one spot and make it explode, then you're almost always going to instantly kill it. Don't get me wrong, this is very satisfying to do and never stops feeling good, but I did feel like there wasn't quite enough different enemy types across the game to the point that I started getting sick of some of them at roughly the 80% mark of my journey, and once I had my weapons and Romeo himself fully upgraded, I started just running past whichever ones I didn't really need to fight. I would have liked to have seen a few more different enemy types across the game, maybe some level specific ones, but also with them all having the giant glowing weakness just in different places, it started feeling a bit too samey as the game went on. It would have been pretty cool to have seen some different colour schemes across different enemy types as well. As far as the main parts of the design go, I do really like the way that this game looks. It's got that incredibly recognisable look and feel of a Grasshopper and Suda51 game, but compared to games like No More Heroes, it has a much less cel-shaded look to it and instead boasts a more modern high-definition clean art style that doesn't lose that cartoony and unique aesthetic. The levels themselves are also well done, both in terms of visual design but also design in how they're played. There's just under 10 chapters in the game, and each features a totally unique level, setting, and time period within the town of Deadford, which succeed at having their own unique identity, while each having their own way of being played and progressing. Some levels even buck the usual straightforward action game trend and offer a unique experience entirely, which I greatly appreciated. The only level I thought was a major letdown and an absolute chore to play was the final level, which has me dreading ever doing a repeat playthrough of on a higher difficulty. The character designs are very solid, but I feel like Romeo's outfit doesn't really match his character. As you can see, our titular hero boasts a sci-fi styled take on what looks to me like a pro baseball player's outfit, but considering that Romeo used to be a regular cop and is now a space-time FBI police agent, I would have been really into seeing the devs do a take on a sci-fi police outfit instead. Also, while not necessary since the weapons look cool as it is, I would have liked to have been able to buy different skins in game for my weapons to maybe give them a unique colour scheme or just make them look a little different as the game goes on. Before we move on to giving Romeo is a Dead Man its score, there are a few more points that I want to address, the first being the game's technical performance. I myself have played and reviewed this game on PC, and for the record, my PC is incredibly beefy. There's not much that can take this machine down. That is, until this game. You see, this game isn't some technical marvel or innovative in visuals or anything like that. It's just incredibly unoptimized, and the PC port is quite lackluster. DLSS and frame gen seem to be bugged for myself and many other people, which causes the game to face severe performance problems. I can hit over 100 frames per second at 4K max on Space Marine 2, but you're telling me that running around a level with some moving lights and 5 moving enemies I'm getting down to 30 FPS? Come on now. Don't even get me started on one of the later chapters in the game in which every single cutscene ran at 3 to 6 FPS and was entirely unwatchable. The next point I have is the playtime. I played through the game from start to finish, having done all optional combat challenge dungeons and finished my playthrough with a total time of 15 hours, which for an action hack and slash title, I actually think that's quite a decent runtime. Combined with the fact that this didn't launch at full price on Steam, and I do have to say I felt like my purchase was worthwhile. The only concern with the length is that the lack of enemy variety did get tiring. The issues with the PC port only got worse as the game went on, and having a narrative that isn't very straightforward could put off players if the payoff is a long wait away. The last point to address is difficulty. I played on the medium difficulty level, which I do for all of my first game playthroughs, and I felt like this game was a bit too easy and brain dead around 80% of the time. But the other 20% was sudden difficulty spikes, not by good design, but by either bad luck or the old Dark Souls 2 method of just throwing way too many enemies at you at once. The bosses themselves ran into a similar issue. Some of them gave me some really fun and satisfying fights where I had to wait and time my attack strings, but some of them I just walked up to and hit them with all I had and they were dead within 20 seconds and never got to play the game. The difficulty fluctuating so much during my playthrough wasn't a major detriment, but it was a little jarring sometimes. Romeo is a Dead Man is not a perfect game. It has a lot of things that I like about it and I think are pretty cool, but I hesitate to even call it a great game. The thing about Romeo is a Dead Man is that it's a throwback to when games were made by a team or led by a person who had an idea, who made the game because there was a concept they really wanted to execute, whether it worked or not. It reminds me of when games weren't afraid to take risks, and instead each and every game actively took risks to carve out their own unique identity. This is a game that doesn't execute everything it sets out to do, but it's not afraid to be itself, and that is such a refreshing feeling for this industry in 2026. For pros, we have fun and satisfying combat with small but cool weapon variety and good progression systems, fun music and level design, a very unapologetically strange narrative and constant energy. For negatives, we have quite bad performance from the PC port, slight lack in enemy design and variety, movesets not getting deeper as the game goes on, and a cast of characters that still don't give you a reason to care about them by the time the credits roll. Today, I'll be giving Romeo is a Dead Man a score of 7 out of 10. I do personally quite like this game and what it sets out to be, but it wasn't particularly hitting the right things I like for me to love it. I am very glad that I've played through it though, and I do feel myself wanting to go back and finally experience some of the Suda51 games that I've been sleeping on. I hope this game sets a standard for 2026 that developers are making the kinds of games they want to make or play, and not making games that are safe and boring to hit mass market appeal, because we need more of what this is in the industry. That's going to be it for the review today, everyone. If you've made it to the end here, then please subscribe to the channel since it would help out a lot. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.